He was the surgeon who never lost a patient until the day his wife became one. Now, with his newborn daughter's life hanging by a thread and a mysterious doctor pulling strings behind the scenes, he must face the truth. The real danger isn't in the operating room. It's standing beside him. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. The operating room buzzed with tension. Machines beeped steadily, then suddenly faster. The patient's heart rate dropped. Nurses called out numbers, their voices rising in pitch. Dr. Kieran Hale stood still, focused, his hand steady over the patient's skull. He barely noticed the sweat running down his back. "We're losing him," one nurse whispered, but Kieran didn't flinch. "More light," he said calmly. "Quiet, please." The small rupture in the patient's brain was almost invisible. It was buried behind delicate tissue, waiting to burst. One wrong move, 1 second of hesitation, and the patient would be gone. Kieran had done this 100 times before, but each time felt like the first. 7 hours into the surgery, he was tired but determined. He knew this man's name. He knew the man had 3 kids waiting at home, and Kieran had promised his wife, just before the operation started, that he would make it back in time for dinner. That promise already seemed far away. "Dr. Hale," said a calm voice beside him. "I've got his vitals steady. Take your time." Kieran glanced briefly at the new anesthesiologist. He hadn't worked with her before. Her name was Dr. Naomi Grieve. She had sharp features and green eyes that didn't flinch under pressure. She met his gaze with quiet confidence. He gave a slight nod and turned back to the microscope. 10 minutes later, the bleeding stopped. The monitor showed the heart rate returning to normal. Kieran let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Done," he said quietly. He stripped off his gloves and walked out of the operating room without fanfare. Another life saved. Another long day in the locker room. The hot shower poured over him. It helped a little to wash away the stress. At 37, Dr. Kieran Hale was already a name people knew. Some called him a genius. Others said he was just obsessed. Either way, he saved lives, and that was enough for him. As he changed into clean clothes, his phone buzzed. A message lit up the screen. "Baby kicked all through my lecture today. She clearly hates 19th century poetry. Dinner at 7. Love you. M." He smiled at the text and typed back, "Smart kid. Running late. Save me some." As he stepped into the elevator, another person slipped in just before the doors closed. It was Dr. Grieve, still in scrubs, her dark hair pulled back tightly. She held out her hand. "Dr. Hale," she said with a soft smile. "You were impressive today." "Thank you," he replied, polite but guarded. "You held it together. Not every anesthesiologist would have stayed that calm." "I've worked tougher cases," she said, "but not many surgeons with your kind of control." He raised an eyebrow. "My reputation precedes me?" "They say you have the best hands in the hospital," she replied, "and that you don't make mistakes." There was something in her tone, not admiration exactly, something more curious, like she was testing him. Kieran gave a quick smile. "Well, Dr. Grieve, you seem to know all about me, but I know nothing about you. I started here last month, moved from St. Louis. I go where the work is exciting." "Good choice," he said, though something about her seemed a little too perfect. "Coffee sometime?" she asked casually. "There's a place across the street." His phone buzzed again, another message from Emily. He looked down and paused, then shook his head. "Another time," he said. "My wife's expecting me." "Of course," she replied. But before the elevator opened, she added, "I imagine she's anxious. Baby due soon, right?" Kieran frowned. "How did you know that?" Naomi laughed lightly. "Hospital gossip. People talk." He didn't answer. The doors opened and she walked away. Kieran stood in the parking lot for a moment, unsettled, but then he drove home, pushing the feeling aside. When he walked into the apartment, the smell of garlic and tomatoes greeted him. Emily stood at the stove wearing one of his old shirts, her round belly stretching the fabric. Her curly hair was piled messily on her head. "There's the hero," she smiled. He kissed her cheek and touched her stomach gently. "How are my girls?" he asked. "Your daughter's training for the Olympics on my bladder," she said. "And your wife is tired. But okay." He took the spoon from her hand. "Go sit down. I'll finish." As he stirred the sauce, he watched her rub her belly, her eyes clouding briefly. She was worried. This pregnancy had come after 3 miscarriages. Each one had left deeper scars. "What did the doctor say yesterday?" he asked. "Everything looks fine," she said, "but my blood pressure's a little high. She wants to monitor it closely." He frowned. "How high?" "Not dangerously high. Just worth watching." He nodded and sat beside her. "This time is different," he said gently. "She's strong. You're strong." Emily leaned on his shoulder, but he felt her tension. They both knew strength alone wasn't always enough, and somewhere, deep in the back of his mind, the green eyes of Dr. Grieve flickered again, but he didn't say anything. Not yet. The hospital never slept. Lights buzzed in long white halls. Shoes squeaked on the polished floor. Machines hummed behind closed doors. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Dr. Kieran Hale stood over yet another patient, his hands steady, his mind sharp. But outside the operating room, things were starting to blur. In the last few weeks, something had shifted. Cases that once felt clear now carried a strange weight. Patients recovered, but some developed odd symptoms after surgery. Nothing major, just unexpected. Low blood pressure, nausea that didn't match the medication, blood levels that seemed off. The hospital chalked it up to coincidence. But Kieran started to feel uneasy, especially because one name kept showing up on the paperwork, Dr. Naomi Grieve. At first, it had felt like chance. She just happened to be assigned to the same surgeries. She was always calm, always ready, always there. Too ready, and too often. Still, when Kieran saw her in the staff lounge one morning, she smiled like nothing was wrong. "Long night?" she asked, pouring herself a cup of coffee. He nodded. "Post-op complications again, 3rd one this month." "Odd," she said, sipping her coffee. "But sometimes, even perfect surgeries have imperfect recoveries." Her voice was smooth. Her smile was easy. But there was something behind her eyes. A flicker, a pause, something he couldn't quite name. His mentor, Dr. Miles Torrin, noticed it too. "She's quick," Miles said quietly one evening as they stood outside the intensive care unit. "Almost too quick." Kieran looked at him. "You think she's doing something wrong?" "I think she's hiding something. I checked her work history. She's moved through 5 hospitals in 5 years. Always glowing reviews. But no one remembers her leaving." Kieran frowned. "That's strange." "Strange enough to watch your back," Miles said. At home, the weight of the hospital followed Kieran like a shadow. Emily was now in her 8th month. The doctor had ordered bed rest. She was frustrated, anxious, and bored. Kieran tried to be present, but he was tired, distracted, and torn in too many directions. "I feel useless," Emily said one night as she lay on the couch, her feet resting on pillows. "And enormous." "You're growing a human," he said, kneeling to rub her ankles. "That's the opposite of useless." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her blood pressure had crept higher. The doctor mentioned the risk of preeclampsia. They both tried to act calm, but the fear pressed against them like a wall. Kieran stayed late at the hospital more often now. He told himself it was for the patients, for the research, for the team. But sometimes when Naomi texted him after a surgery with a simple, "Coffee?" it was easier to say yes than to go home to fear and silence. They never crossed the line. Not really, but they met after hours. They talked about medicine, about perfection, about failure. She told him things no one else did. "Do you ever feel like you're pretending?" Naomi asked one night as they sat in a quiet booth across from the hospital. "Like everyone sees you as this genius, but you're just keeping it together?" He had looked at her then, surprised. because that was exactly how he felt sometimes. Every day, he admitted. She nodded slowly. Me too. That night, when she brushed his hand as she stood to leave, he didn't pull away. The next morning, he didn't tell Emily. He told himself it didn't mean anything, but it did. The cracks were spreading. Then came the call. He was in a department meeting when his phone buzzed. Emily's name on the screen. He almost didn't answer, but something made him step out into the hall. Her voice was tight, trembling. "Kieran," she said, "I'm bleeding. There's so much blood." His world narrowed. "Call an ambulance," he said, already running. "I'm coming." He didn't wait for the elevator. He took the stairs 2 at a time. His hands shook as he unlocked his car. Halfway through the parking garage, Naomi stepped in front of him. "What's wrong?" she asked. "My wife," he said. "It's the baby." "Go," she said. "I'll cover your cases." He barely heard her as he drove, heart pounding. Emily was being taken to the same hospital. His hospital. Part of him was glad. He could oversee everything. He could protect her. But another part of him twisted. He knew who would be working that night. And he knew their paths were about to collide. He raced through the emergency entrance, shouting her name. A nurse pointed him toward Trauma 3. Inside, Emily lay on the bed, pale and still, surrounded by a flurry of activity. Her belly was strapped with monitors. Blood soaked the sheets beneath her. "Placental abruption," the obstetrician said. "We need surgery now." Kieran moved to her side. Her eyes fluttered open. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. I tried to stay calm. "This isn't your fault," he said. "You're going to be okay." Then the doors opened again. Naomi stood there in scrubs, her expression unreadable. "I came to help," she said. "I'm already prepped." Kieran felt something cold settle in his chest. "We've got it covered," the obstetrician said. But Naomi didn't leave. "Your wife's in good hands," she said quietly to Kieran. "You should focus on saving lives. It's what you're best at." Kieran looked down at Emily. Her fingers gripped his. "Stay," she whispered. He hesitated. Just one moment. Then everything changed. The waiting room lights were too bright. Everything felt too loud. Machines beeped. Footsteps echoed. But for Dr. Kieran Hale, there was only silence inside his head. He had chosen wrong. While his wife had been rushed into emergency surgery, he had scrubbed in for a procedure. Naomi said only he could perform. She told him it was life or death, a case like one he'd handled before. And in his fear, his helplessness, he had said yes. For 2 hours, he worked on a patient who had a routine condition. Not the rare emergency she had described. Not the impossible case only he could solve. As soon as he saw the scans, he knew he'd been lied to. "You tricked me," he whispered across the table during the surgery. Naomi didn't deny it. "I got you where you needed to be," she said calmly. His stomach twisted. "My wife is in surgery, you knew that. And you couldn't have helped her," she said. "But here you're saving a life. Isn't that what matters most?" Her words cut deep. Not because they were true, but because he had once believed they were. When the operation ended, Kieran didn't wait. He tore off his gown and stormed out of the room, fury rising in his chest. He rushed to the recovery wing where his daughter had just been born. She was tiny, underweight, and in an incubator, surrounded by tubes and wires. Charlotte. That was the name Emily had picked. A nurse spoke softly. "She's breathing on her own. She's a fighter." Kieran stood there staring at the little girl he hadn't met until now. She looked too small to be real, too fragile to survive this world. Down the hall, Emily was waking up from surgery. Walked to her room with heavy steps, each one sinking deeper into guilt. When he entered, she turned her head toward him. Her face was pale, her eyes glassy. But when she saw him, they filled with pain. "You weren't there?" she said quietly. He nodded, ashamed. "I know. I needed you. I was in surgery." She looked away. Naomi told me. She said you were the only one who could help that patient, but the nurse said it was a routine case. Anyone could have done it. Kieran couldn't answer. The truth burned in his chest. Emily's voice trembled. You chose her over me. No, he said. I chose to feel useful. I chose not to stand helplessly by while you suffered. And that was wrong. She didn't speak. She just closed her eyes. Later that night, in the newborn unit, Kieran sat beside Charlotte's incubator. The machines clicked and buzzed. Nurses walked quietly around him. He watched her sleep. A tiny hand curled near her cheek. He hadn't protected her. Or her mother. He had failed them both when he returned home to shower and change. His phone buzzed with a message. It was from Naomi. You saved a life tonight. Don't forget that. Some people would never understand your sacrifices. He didn't reply. The next morning, Dr. Miles Torrin met him in the hospital cafeteria. We need to talk, Miles said. Kieran followed him into a private room behind the staff lounge. We found something, Miles began. A pharmacy log. 3 patients who had strange reactions. They all received medication under Naomi's care. Meds they weren't prescribed. Kieran's heart dropped. You think she's tampering? I think she's testing people, using situations to watch how they respond. Emotionally, medically, maybe even morally. Kieran felt sick. And you, Miles continued, are at the center of it. Her notes, her patterns, she's watching you. She manipulated me, Kieran admitted. She knew I was vulnerable. Afraid. It's deeper than that, Miles said. She wanted to see if she could control you, and now she has access to your family. The word family hit harder than he expected. Kieran stood. We have to stop her. Later that day, a meeting was called with the hospital's internal review team. They began looking at records, surveillance footage, and medication logs. But then a nurse from the neonatal unit ran into the office, breathless. Dr. Hale, she said. It's your wife. Something's wrong. Kieran didn't wait. He ran in Emily's room. The monitors were flashing red. A doctor was giving instructions. A nurse was checking her IV. Her blood isn't clotting, the doctor said. She's losing blood again. How? Kieran demanded. She was stable. We found something unusual in her system, the doctor said. An anticoagulant. It wasn't ordered. It wasn't in her chart. Kieran's world tilted. He knew what this was. He rushed to the security office. Pull up the cameras, he said. Room 204, this morning. They found it. Naomi entering the room alone, standing by the IV, checking her watch, smiling. Kieran couldn't breathe. This wasn't a test. It was a warning. Naomi had crossed a line, and he knew, deep down, that she was only getting started. The hospital lights flickered as the sun dipped behind the city skyline. Outside, the streets buzzed with life. Inside, Dr. Kieran Hale stood in his daughter's hospital room, watching her chest rise and fall in the clear plastic crib. Charlotte had survived the night. The antidote had worked, but the danger was far from over. Naomi was gone. After slipping away during the chaos, she had vanished without a trace. Her locker was empty. Her apartment had been cleared out. Her name no longer showed in hospital records. It was as if she had never existed, except she had, and she had left a scar on everyone she touched. The hospital had brought in security. Federal agents were now involved. Dr. Miles Torrin met with Kieran behind closed doors. We believe Naomi forged her identity, Miles said. The person she claimed to be doesn't exist. Kieran sat quietly, trying to keep calm. She almost killed my wife. We know. And she's done this before, Miles continued. We found similar patterns at other hospitals, always the same type of cases, always a connection to a lead surgeon, always disappearing before anyone could prove anything. Kieran didn't speak. He didn't need to. The guilt was already crushing him. We're setting a trap, Miles said. We need your help. 2 days later, the plan was in place. The hospital would pretend Charlotte was sick again. They would fake her medical records and leak the news quietly, just enough to draw Naomi back. They knew she was watching. On the third night, Kieran sat beside Charlotte's crib just like before. Only this time the crib held a lifelike doll. The real baby was in a safe room, protected by armed security. Every second stretched like a string pulled too tight. Then came a sound. The door opened. Slowly, a woman stepped in wearing hospital scrubs and a surgical mask. "Dr. Hale?" she asked, soft and calm. "I'm the new specialist assigned to your daughter." Kieran looked up. It was her. The red hair was new. The glasses, the posture, the voice, different. But those green eyes hadn't changed. "She's struggling. Again," Kieran said, keeping his voice steady. "The other doctors think it might be an infection." Naomi nodded and stepped closer. "I'd like to try something new," she said, pulling a syringe from her pocket. "This medication isn't officially approved yet, but it's shown promise." Kieran's heart pounded in his chest. He watched, her carefully waiting. She moved to insert the needle into the IV line. At that exact moment, a voice echoed from the hidden earpiece in Kieran's ear. "We see her. She's on camera. Move in now." Kieran stood up slowly. "What is in that syringe?" he asked. Naomi stopped, surprised by the shift in his tone. "Why does it matter?" she asked. "You know it will help." "Or hurt," Kieran said. He took a step forward. "You lied to me once before, not again," she smiled. "You were always smarter than the rest," she said softly, "but not fast enough." The door burst open. Agents rushed in. "Don't move," one of them shouted. But Naomi didn't panic. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small device, pressing a button. "You think you've outsmarted me?" she said. "But while you were setting your trap, I was setting mine." Kieran's blood ran cold. "What did you do?" "I already gave your daughter the real medication," Naomi said. "1 hour ago, delayed release. In about 5 minutes, she'll stop breathing, unless I give you the antidote." "You're lying," Kieran said. But fear gripped his chest. "Check on her," Naomi said calmly. He called into the earpiece. A pause. Then the agent's voice, tight and urgent. "Charlotte is turning blue. Breathing irregular. We're moving her now." Kieran turned back to Naomi. "You won't get away with this." "I don't need to get away," she said. "I just need you to choose." "Choose what?" "Me," she said simply. "You and me. We disappear. I give you the antidote. And we continue our work. We change the world." "By poisoning babies?" Kieran asked, his voice trembling. "By discovering truth," she replied. "Sacrifice is always part of science." Kieran stepped forward. "Give me the antidote." She held up a folded paper. "Formulas here. Exact mix. But only if you come with me." He stared at her. Then, with sudden speed, he grabbed the paper from her hand and shoved her backward. The agents moved in instantly, pulling her to the floor. She didn't struggle. "Too late," she said. "She's already fading." Kieran didn't wait. He ran. He reached the emergency room in seconds. Charlotte was pale. Her eyes fluttered. The monitors screamed warnings. "We have it," Kieran shouted, waving the paper. "Start mixing the antidote now." Pharmacists rushed into action. Minutes later, the medicine flowed into her tiny body. Her chest rose, then fell, then rose again. A steady rhythm. She was breathing. A nurse whispered, "She's responding." Kieran sat on the floor, shaking, tears in his eyes. Outside, Naomi was taken away in handcuffs. Her mask was gone. Her eyes still calm. Still watching. As she passed Kieran's window, she looked up. "It was never personal," she mouthed. But to Kieran it was. Everything about it had been personal. Later that week, Emily and Charlotte were discharged. Kieran stood with them, quiet and unsure. Emily turned to him. "You're coming home?" she asked. "Only if you'll have me," he said. She was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. "We have healing to do," she said. "But we do it together." Kieran looked down at his daughter. Alive. Safe. A miracle. As they walked toward the car, a cold wind blew behind them. Naomi was gone, but not forgotten. Not yet.